Hello, and welcome to another episode of Bear Does Film Night, where me and Matt discuss a topic and craft a double bill by bringing some films to the table to discuss what should be in it. Tonight's double bill is Best Buds being Best Buds, where we are going to discuss buddy movies and the films that would make a good double bill within that topic. It's a looser topic this week, I think, than previous weeks. I think a lot can fit into this.
Yep.
A lot of my frame of mind goes to buddy cop films. There's a lot of them out there, but certain comedies would also fit into this. Although buddy cop movies usually are action comedies, but
Quite often.
I imagine there's potentially a lot of comedy here. What are your thoughts on the topic?
I agree. Quite often it would be comedy. Usually as well, I think within it being comedy, we got the odd couple style stuff.
Yeah.
The
That would have been a good.
the combining of two polar opposites in ways. So whether it be, a couple of my backups would have been things like Dragnet.
Ooh, yeah.
On the previous episode, obviously, we were speaking about Saturday Night Live, like previous Saturday Night Live performers going into comedy films. Of course, one of Dan Aykroyd's standout performances as the lead. I think
I just had a brilliant thought for a backup for myself as well, but I can't remember the name of it, and I'm struggling to find it. It's a Peter Falk movie.
a Peter Falk movie.
Yeah,
Do you mean Columbo? Like any of the Columbos? Because
it's not one of the Columbos, no.
to be honest, Columbo and his dog would just work in any Columbo episode.
It was a comedy he made
Huh.
with the In-Laws.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, the In-Laws. That would have been I forgot about that film, and that might have been a choice if it
If you hadn't already
come up.
Yeah. On previous episodes, I've gone first. I think we'll allow you to go first this time, James. Although, I think. First though, what are your views on what the topic means? Obviously, I've said mine. I think
Very much. I think buddy cop films, or at least the framework, they don't always have to be cops, but the framework of a buddy cop movie is something that very much fits into this. A lot of Shane Black's filmography would fit into this topic. Like I say, they don't always have to be police, but there's a very similar skeletal structure through that. Things like 21 Jump Street.
Yep.
Just that too. But it's like you say as well, it's the odd couple, isn't it? It's two people who shouldn't necessarily be friends but are, and the misadventures they get up to along the way. My first choice is probably a very obvious one. It may be the first and only time this man makes it onto this list.
Yeah.
But it is a Michael Bay film.
Oh.
And it is Bad Boys.
Oh, Bad Boys. I thought you were going to go down Transformers there.
Oh, well, no. The latest Transformers movie, Bumblebee, that would fit this topic very well.
That would have been a brilliant choice. Although, to be perfectly honest, like the first of the Michael Bay Transformers films with Shia LaBeouf and Bumblebee also
It's good.
would have worked. But yes,
Whatever comes after that first one is not a bad film.
the first one and Bumblebee, that'll do.
But yeah, Bad Boys, it comes out in a time before mocking Michael Bay was necessarily the done thing. Not that some of that mocking is deserved, to be fair.
A lot of it is, yes.
Yeah. But
then we allow him to do it, so we should probably be mocking ourselves as well.
I mean, Netflix has basically recently given him blank checks to make whatever he wants, it would seem.
Yep.
But yeah, the first Bad Boys, it's I think probably a perfect example of the genre. You've got Will Smith and Martin Lawrence.
Yep.
And they have great chemistry together.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's the pair of them are Will Smith more than Martin Lawrence, but they're roguish cops who get the job done, but don't necessarily follow the rules. Although Martin Lawrence is that's where the dynamic comes from. Martin Lawrence really, he's got his wife and his kids at home, and he just wants a quiet life, while Will Smith's character very much wants the action, right? Wants the fame, the glory.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's got comedy, it's got action, it's got two best buds being best buds.
Very true. Very true. I think it's like, yeah, it comes from a time where, I mean, it was really Michael Bay's first big film. It was obviously in the Bruckheimer stable, when Bruckheimer just hired directors of Michael Bay's ilk to make solid action films. And this,
it came out in 1995, which is that's further back than I thought.
Because before this, Michael Bay was making music videos and Playboy special edition videos. So
this might be one of my earlier 18s that I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is one of those odd 18s where, like, I think it's because it potentially racks up just enough of the swears. It has some drugs in it, and it's got this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
That as far as the British ruling, like the BBFC at the time and the guidelines, it probably just snuck into an 18.
The plot revolves around them having to pretend to be each other.
Yes.
So they have to kind of put their feet in each other's shoes, and they learn to appreciate each other more through that.
Yeah.
It's, if you want action, if you want like the buddy cop movie, and there is other examples, as we've mentioned previously. I think a lot of Shane Black films, your Lethal Weapons, your Fit.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, this is the, I won't say budget, because obviously it's quite an expensive one, but like in the same way that Under Siege is Die Hard on a boat, this is Lethal Weapon, but without the two lead characters. They've taken all of the ingredients of Lethal Weapon, and then thrown a bit of extra spice in there. And I mean, it's very much obviously it's right at the end of that period of films like the Die Hard films, like the original 3 Die Hard films, the first few Lethal Weapons, and Under Siege, of course, and even Speed. But of that,
and comes at a time where Will Smith is really riding high.
Well, it was probably the first film really that Will Smith was the big lead in, because obviously he was very famous for his music and for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but at the time his acting in film were actually smaller roles. This was meant to be
Men in Black by a couple of years.
Well, this was meant to be a Martin Lawrence led film, but Will Smith stole the show, and in the end, it's like when they made Bad Boys 2, he still insisted that Martin Lawrence should be listed first on the posters and everything, because originally the first one was meant to be a Martin Lawrence film more than a Will Smith film. A good choice.
We recently had a Bad Boys for Life as well,
which apparently was excellent.
Third film in the franchise. It was.
Oh.
I very much enjoyed it.
I didn't get to see it, unfortunately. I can't remember when it came out.
Late last year.
Was it late last year? Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, might have been very early this year, but time is meaningless these days.
Indeed,
if you're watching this in the far future, we are in the middle of a worldwide plague or pandemic.
It's not quite a plague. Not enough people are dying, and gruesomely enough. But it's just
plague sounds more dramatic. Though.
It does. Yeah, an excellent choice. My first pick then, and my two don't necessarily work together as a back-to-back.
Neither do mine.
So this is going to be an interesting one when we see all 4 films. My first one, as you said, best buds doing best bud things. I thought of the euphemism or pun or colloquialism of bud, meaning marijuana. And so,
have you gone for?
So initially, I was thinking Pineapple Express because.
Well, let me see if I can guess this after you do a bit more interaction. Let's see if I can guess it.
Initially, I went for Pineapple Express. It's not Pineapple Express because of on camera and behind the camera, it's James Franco and Seth Rogen who are best buds, who also enjoy best buds, doing best bud things, and it's quite meta. It is like, I suppose, them Mary suing themselves, if you're going to like kind of, I suppose describe it that way. But it isn't their best film, and so I had to think about it. And although James Franco isn't necessarily involved with this particular one, I think it's a much better example of the Seth Rogen.
My guess is not going to be accurate, I don't think.
Go on, what were you thinking I was going to go for then?
I thought you were going to go Harold and Kumar.
No. Although an excellent choice. I love the first film. But I'm going to go for Superbad.
Yeah. I think I know where after this, I'm pretty sure I know where our double bill is going to end up.
Interesting. So, Superbad, for those who haven't seen it, is a semi-biographical film based on a script that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, his co-writer and best friend in real life, started to write when they were 13. And, excuse me, obviously, therefore, loosely based on their own teenage exploits and things that they may have experienced, but most certainly the emotions that they experienced as teenagers. And what I remember seeing that film, and it came out the same year as Knocked Up. In fact, it didn't come out. I think it was only a few months away from Knocked Up as well. Also with Seth Rogen.
We got like a really. There's a few years there where we got like a really hefty batch of
Seth Rogen films.
Of Judd Apatow.
Judd
produced
Apatow
films,
produced Seth. It was. There was a certain kind of guerrilla aspect to the way that the film looked and felt, that it almost felt like Seth Rogen had made Superbad at the same time as making Knocked Up, and like kind of just done it when the main cast and crew moved on. They just quickly set up, did some scenes, and then moved and kind of chased the bigger budget film around. I know that isn't how it was made, but like
a film that gives us an early-ish Emma Stone performance.
A very
as well.
An early-ish Emma Stone performance. I think the thing that it came for me was that obviously it's told through the male perspective predominantly, and it as crude as it can be, and we referred to this in the previous episode when talking about things like Kevin and Perry. As crude as it can be, it does describe the experience of being a teenage boy quite well. And I was young enough at the time to remember it, because I think it was 2006, maybe?
We were later. We were in uni when Superbad came out.
2007 it was released, so...
we weren't in uni then.
Yeah, 2007.
No, we were. We were, weren't we?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of university, I think. Yes, UK release was 14th of September 2007. So I was 25. So I was still young enough to still remember being a teenager quite vividly. And a lot of those feelings and emotions, I thought they really articulated quite well. And in particular, that notion of friendship.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's the only thing that really gets them through the film. The plot itself is incredibly simple. Two boys, maybe three if you include McLovin, are tasked with getting drink to take to a party so that they can potentially have sex. and that's it.
Yeah.
And all the shenanigans that have with it, and I think it was the closest thing to a John Hughes film that we'd seen in a very long time. It was crude, but it was simplistic and raw and honest, and
I think it's one of those things that, as we touched on in the previous episode, of a difference between potentially British and American crude comedy, in the fact that it's crude, but it has an underlying sense of heart.
Yes.
running through it. At its core, it is about friends, right?
But then I think it was also because it was about themselves, and because it was them making a film that was much closer in their age group than, say, with Kevin and Perry, where it was people in their 40-somethings making a film about teenagers. That they could make it more heartfelt because it was still something that they could readily remember and experience and feel, and so it was. It was a really good film. I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's underrated in many. I know the term underrated is very, very overused, but I think it's a forgotten classic in many ways.
I've not seen it in quite some time, but it is a.
I'd argue it. Obviously, he plays a smaller part in it, but in the sense that Seth Rogen's the creator of it, as opposed to necessarily being the star of it, I'd argue it's the best film he'll ever make.
I think I think on the patch, like every so many years, we get 2 teen films.
Yeah.
One that follows the Clueless, Mean Girls, Easy A, Edge of 17 cycle.
Yeah.
And one that follows the American Pie
cycle. Yeah.
Porky's, which I imagine probably best left in the past to a certain extent.
Yes.
American Pie, Superbad.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like every 5 to 10 years we tend to get a film that slots into one of those two.
Yeah.
Two kind of slots that updates that teenage experience for a slightly more modern take.
I think going back to the topic though with this one, I think the most important thing is how strong the bond of the friendship is. And because in your teenage years, obviously everyone's going through hormonal changes, and it can be a tremendously stressful and experience, especially if you are on the fringes of the main popular groups.
That's also something that I think runs through like these buddy films in general, both buddy cop movies and more like what we're discussing here, films about teenage friends, is they follow an almost similar pattern to a rom-com, right?
Yeah.
Couple meet, couple get together, couple break up, couple get back together.
Yeah.
You always have that same beat of best friends at the start, but something tries to come between them.
Yeah. Before
they realise their argument is stupid and they come back together, right?
So that's my choice. As I say, I think it was one of those cinematic experiences where like it didn't necessarily need to be something I saw at the cinema, but I'm glad I did, because I think being completely engulfed by it in the way that you do in a cinema, it made me leave feeling that like I've experienced something.
I think Home Release might have been the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
I think potentially your copy of it.
Maybe. It was also, ironically enough, one of the best Blu-rays of its generation. One of the highest quality, absolutely stunning. But yeah,
early Blu-ray
as well. So that was my choice. My first choice, Superbad. James.
Case.
It's me. Me for number 2. We're doing it in reverse this week. Now, talking about odd couples, not a buddy cop film, but certainly a good guys versus bad guys, and a very odd couple because one of them isn't human.
Okay.
And I'm going to go all the way back to 1968.
I don't know if I know where you're going.
The Love Bug, the original Herbie film.
Never seen it.
Wow. So
I've seen the early noughties remake with
Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the original.
Well, I assume it will probably be on Disney Plus, or if it isn't there already, it probably will be soon.
Oh, it'll definitely be on Disney Plus.
Yeah. And unlike some other Disney films of its era, it probably doesn't need a racial warning. There might be something I've forgotten, but it probably doesn't need a racial warning. It was obviously for those who don't know what Herbie is a magic anthropomorphized Volkswagen Beetle who almost like a transformer who got stuck in the form of the car and can't speak but can honk its horn, and you can, in the same way that like R2-D2 makes noises and you sort of know what's going on. But the original film called The Love Bug was a pun because it's a story of romance between the lead character, a male racing car driver, and obviously a female. And then it was set during the 60s, so the whole summer of love and stuff like that. And bug is a colloquial term for a Volkswagen Beetle. A bug. A beetle is a bug. So the Love Bug brought people together. And it's very much the story of the driver and the car being the buddies, being the friends, and how they get through things together. And because it's a strange old beetle that in theory shouldn't have anywhere near enough power to beat the cars that it's racing against, and I mean, how could it? Tiny little thing. And of course it was in that era as well where like not that America is drastically different now, but America would most certainly be American cars, blah blah blah, yeah.
I assume it's very much a Disney live action film.
It is very much a Disney live action film. It looks and sounds and feels exactly as you think it probably looks and sounds and feels, and ends with a glorious happy ending, as it would. It spawned 3 sequels. The first of the sequels, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, is possibly actually my favourite of the bunch, but I've chosen the first one because I think it's obviously it starts everything off. And then Herbie Rides Again, which is a lovely tale about how Herbie helps an old lady helps an old lady make sure that the bad guys don't close down a retirement home, and then Herbie Goes Bananas, which is just a bit thing. It was that fourth film that doesn't, like, you don't need to watch, and you know why they didn't make any more for some time. So, but yeah, The Love Bug,
Okay.
a childhood favourite. James.
Okay, so my second film, and touching back to your first film, how we talked about the cycle of films and how Superbad, it was probably the next in the cycle from American Pie.
Yep.
I think my next film is the next in the cycle from Superbad.
Ooh.
However, I think it went criminally underappreciated, and it never got the following that Superbad or American Pie before it got. It is quite a recent film. It is from 2018.
Mm-hmm.
It is a film called Blockers.
Really? You went for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about 3 teenage girls who want to lose their virginity before they leave school. High school, American high school. And I think, but it does an interesting dual narrative. So we get 2 sets of friendships in this film. It follows the teenagers on their misadventures, as a film like this would normally do. And we also follow their parents trying to stop them, block them, as you will. So you get to watch a friendship between three parents who haven't got a clue how to
deal with the situation,
with their children growing up, and you have a coming of age tale of three teenagers. And one particular through line I particularly like is that it's one parent of each kid, as the other each parent's other half is perfectly normal and does not get why they're doing this. They're perfectly reasonable about things, and it's these three having to deal with the emotions of their kids growing up. It has a comedic performance from John Cena, and I think we've all learned over the past few years that John Cena is quite hilarious.
Oh yeah, given the right material, he's
While wrestlers going into acting, right? While The Rock discovered he was a charismatic action star, I think John Cena quickly realised, oh wait, no, comedy is what I'm good at. Not necessarily being I don't need to be an action hero. I should be doing comedy films.
Oh yeah.
And he's brilliant in this, well with Leslie Mann, and I forget who plays the other parent.
Yeah, he's a lesser known American, American viewers probably can remember his name, but he doesn't necessarily appear in shows over here as the lead. He's been in things like B99 as a guest and stuff like that. But
he's someone I'll always recognise. But couldn't
name him.
And then you've got three relatively newcomers playing for teenagers. Much like at the time, Superbad also had relatively young newcomers playing for teenagers.
Yep.
All three of them delivered cracking performances as well. And it has that, it can be crass at times, but it has a heavy level of heart. And while you've got these friendships as we go on, it breaks the formula we talked about earlier about how you have the friendships break up and they realise why they're friends and come back together. As the bonding moment here, I think, is ultimately between the parents and their children, as they kind of realise how to move on to the next stages of their life together. But it's very funny. It's a very, very funny film, and I think more people should have watched it.
I think I remember reading a review of it, and I think speaking to you about it as well. And the thing that most people enjoyed the most, actually, I think, was the reverse of what you expect, because it's the parents that are doing the silly, stupid stuff, and the girls are actually relatively mature, or at least sensible.
Yeah, sensible is probably the better.
Like, they've got a decent head on their shoulders, and I think because of that, obviously, it plays with your expectations, it flips the expectations, and so it's very much a crude teen comedy, but not necessarily about crude teens, and more about So it has that element of what was in Superbad, as in it was just a realistic take on teenagers, but then with the slapstick element from the parents. I was ever so slightly disappointed with it when I saw it myself. I think because it sort of suffered from the fact that, on paper, if you look at it, a film where Leslie Mann is the biggest star in it by as far as an actor goes, by a very, very long margin, followed by John Cena, your expectations should be quite low. And I think, therefore, when the reviews came out originally, it was, and some initial reactions, including your own, it was when I got around to watching it, I think it was missing something. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't quite there. I think that what they did with the girls was good, but because it didn't focus on them enough, you didn't quite get the female answer to Superbad that it may
I get
have
where you're
been.
coming from, because the parents are a dual focus.
Yeah,
It's not quite. Yeah, I get.
I think
Get
it's
where you're coming from with that.
it's something where like, and it wouldn't necessarily be the case of, excuse me, making it a longer film would have benefited either. I think it's almost something that maybe having a TV series, it would have worked quite nicely.
I think just adding in the parental plot as well, right? You do lose what would be a traditional teen film, but that focuses on women instead of men.
Yeah.
I think
for me, because it focused on the adults and the silliness and things like that, it wasn't as good as Game Night, which came out at a similar time, and I suppose
Game Night is fantastic.
Game Night, essentially a remake of The Game, with Michael Douglas from the 80s.
Game Night is Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams.
Yes, so it's a dark comedy, but won't spoil anything for those who haven't seen
that
it.
is an actress. I always forget how good she is until I watch her in something that's like,
oh, I mean,
yeah, Rachel McAdams, she's amazing.
She is,
and then I forget again.
I mean, she is one of the greatest comedic actors there's ever been, and I will make that almost outlandish statement. She's as good as anyone has ever been at being a comedy actress.
And recently can be seen in a film about
Eurovision Song Contest.
Pride and Joy for Eurovision Song Contest. We all love it over in Europe.
Yeah.
It's something we take deathly serious every year.
Yep.
Bit like the Super Bowl for America.
But
is
bigger.
What Eurovision is for Europe. The film is not a great film, but it's cast, I think,
perfect cast. I mean, I say it's not a great film. I think actually it is it's a great film for what it is. Like I mean,
it's a film about Eurovision.
Yeah. I mean, it was never going to be any better than it. The fact that it's hit its absolute maximum potential is saying something. But we're digressing. So,
yes, back to our topic at hand.
But I think that's the only issue with God, what's the name of the film again? It's just completely blanked. Blockers. It was right on the tip of my tongue. That's the only issue really with Blockers that I have. I think that like the what it does very well, but I think there's also, for me personally, it felt like there was some missed opportunities here and there. Some of the jokes didn't quite hit for me, but again, I think that's the difference between US and UK humour, that sometimes some things just weren't that funny.
However,
so
I do think we have a double bill here.
Possibly.
I think out of the 4 films we've got to decide from, I think there's a natural, if there's a natural double bill here for what we've picked. Like, I think Superbad and Blockers would make quite a fine evening of viewing. I think throwing Herbie or Bad Boys against either of those, and it's a weird evening.
I mean, the only actually, I'm gonna go for it. I'm going to argue that Herbie and Bad Boys, because of the Ferdinand Porsche link, it's a Ferdinand Porsche buddy cop double bill, because in Bad Boys 1, Will Smith's car was a Porsche, which of course designed and made by the same man who designed the Volkswagen Beetle. They even have the same engine layout. And
you know what? For that link, I'll give it to you. Bad Boys and Herbie it is.
The Love Bug.
The Love Bug.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to watch those 2 films when you get a chance,
if you want the Ferdinand Porsche buddy movie double bill, then you want Bad Boys and The Love Bug.
Or if you are in the mood for some gross out kind of teen comedy, there is the alternative double bill of Superbad and Blockers. But we're going to be watching Bad Boys and The Love Bug.
Thank you very much.
And also, as we did in our last episode, we will give you some snack recommendations. What other classic British snacks should people watch?
So
films?
last week we went for the pickled things.
The classic cinema snack of pickled onions, or in certain regions, pickled eggs.
Yeah, and for the more modern viewer, because obviously that's going back to the 70s now. Obviously the pickled egg flavoured popcorn. Now, I don't think you can beat a good pork scratching. Now, they exist in various forms around the world. Obviously, chicharron or something like that. So, a nice, well-seasoned, crispy pork scratching. But again, that feels a little bit old. It's a little bit Dad goes to the pub. So, how about, and you can only get these in this country, Haribo pork scratching flavoured sweets. So, there you go.
They take, so, as you all know, Haribo quite often made that gelatin.
Yep.
They just basically don't add in the sugary flavourings or fruity flavourings to amplify the pigginess of
except maybe a little bit of
Haribo.
apple, because obviously everyone knows applesauce goes well with pork. So it's a pork scratching and apple flavoured candy for those in America. Look forward to that.
If you've got a British shop nearby you could probably find it on the shelves.
Yeah, Haribo pork scratching flavoured sweets.
And that is it for us today. We'll see you again next time. And don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button.
And if you've got your own double bill along the best buds doing best bud things, please put it in the comments below. Thank you very much.
See ya.
Goodbye.